Shradar, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Kevin, very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back and talk to you again. Like I've mentioned to you a bunch of times before, I've actually really been using Neva for, I think, close to a year now. And I very much, it's my default search engine and I've been using it daily. And I'm not just saying that, like I actually use it all the time, constantly. And I'm really liking what you guys are building. But I'm curious just to get your thoughts on, maybe give us a quick background on yourself, and then I want to dive into what we're going to cover today.
First of all, I have to tell you, that's like the biggest praise that any startup founder can get, which is, God, I use your product every day.
All day
More
too.
than the money, it's like ultimate proof that you're working on something worthwhile. Always makes me happy. Make every founder
Sure.
happy. Yeah, a little bit maybe of background. I actually have an academic background. Got a PhD from out on the East Coast from Brown University, and then worked at research labs, Bell Labs, for a few years out in Jersey before coming out to the Valley. I worked in a small enterprise CRM startup for a few years before joining Google pretty early, 2003. And
Very cool.
I was there for an amazing journey. I started as an engineer in the search ads team, you know, was part of businesses and then led businesses that literally made more than $100 billion of revenue. Nothing
Wow.
I could have imagined when I started Google. And then I left about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, because I wanted to do something new. Tried my hand at venture for a few months before starting Neva. Yeah, and Neva is my first startup. Kind of weird that a 50+ person is doing a startup. But I feel very passionately about the company and the space. Yeah, I'm very excited to be a startup founder.
Very cool. So give us some ideas on how to actually come up with a startup idea, because you went for a pretty big idea and you're competing with obviously some pretty big giants in the space.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the core of how do you come up with a startup idea is actually quite simple. That is, you see a need that somebody has. Quite often, that somebody is just yourself. It's like you're using, some product, or you're trying to get something done, and you go like, "Oh God, this is so hard. I bet a piece of software can do a much better job." And so you pattern match into problems that you yourself are running into. And then you ask a bunch of friends, hey, do you have the same problem? Do you think other people will have the same problem? Fancy name. We call it market research. But at its core, it comes down to an unfulfilled need that you observe, and a set of ideas for why you can solve it and how you can be better than other people that are taking on the same problem. That really is the core of a startup. Obviously, this is actually true both in software and in the real world. It's about sort of, unmet needs and a special insight that says, I can do this pretty well.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I think it's easy. It's probably, well, it's a lot easier to come up with an idea and then decide to going forward is actually the harder part, right? So
Yep.
what advice do you give to people? Okay, they're thinking like somebody needs to really build this. How did you decide, and what advice do you give to people to say like, you know what, I need to be the one to actually build this and go for it?
Yep. I mean, first of all, one of the most important qualities that any product manager, any startup founder really needs to have is empathy. You need to see the world
Yeah.
through other people's eyes, where you need to feel their problem, you need to feel their pain. It's just one thing to say, this is annoying me. I wish there were a solution. But remember, you're not building software just for yourself. You're building
Right.
it for a target set of people. And so you can do quick estimates from there on of how large is this problem? Is it something that has like 100 potential customers? Or is it, I don't know, all the software engineers in North America, which is like
Right.
several million if you just look at software engineers? Or is it more like people in IT? Is it doctors? Is it lawyers? So you sort of need to have a feel for what is your total market for this software. Could also be companies, by the way, small companies, large companies, maybe dentists. So you need to have a feel for that kind of a market research because it will tell you, are you creating a company that has the potential to scale to be a large company? That's number one. And number two, given the product, given the market, do you have the kind of like network that you need in order to succeed? What I mean by that is it is true. You can create a piece of software, put it out on the web, and it can get infinite scale. It's possible. But the more like realistic way in which that works is, you have access to like a network of people that can get the word out, that can become early customers, that can give you feedback on how you go about developing the product. So there needs to be a fit between who you are and what you bring to the table and your relationship with the ecosystem. So for example, if a software engineer suddenly is like, oh, I have a great idea for like growing corn better, sounds a little dicey to me because this person probably doesn't know a lot about agriculture, how farming works, and how to
Right.
get to farmers, how to sell stuff. So you need to be in the right place. There is an idea, a need. You think the market is big, and you think you are the right person for it. It's like bringing all of these together that lets you then take the next step of, yes, I am the person to solve this problem, and I can take the next steps of like trying to put together a team, maybe also have a co-founder. Hopefully, we should talk about that,
Sure.
and then actually approaching investors to get money and work on the idea.
Sure. So walk us through advice for raising money, or when should somebody raise money? Because obviously there's two camps, like just you should raise money, maybe bootstrap, a bit of both. Walk us through your thoughts on that.
I mean, raising money serves two purposes. One, it lets you hire a team. And that clearly is important if you're working on a large problem. You know, with search, for example, we're going to create a new search engine. Step one, crawl the web. You're like, oops, the web is like many, many, many petabytes large. So there is that purpose. It is also validation. If
Yeah.
somebody that has invested a lot in companies is willing to put their hard-earned cash or their LP's cash into your company, then that is actually, in some ways validating your idea. And then
Interesting.
the third part is the network. Um, I'm a part-time VC. What we bring to the table are a set of relationships with
Right.
potential customers, for example, or other people that you might need to make your company successful. People that have seen different stages, that know the evolution of companies, are able to advise you and give you feedback about the things that you don't know. The unknown unknowns in a startup are very large. That's part of the reason to invest because you want people that have been through the journey and can give you great ideas. But this question of should you bootstrap for a while or should you go raise money right away is a tricky one. Some of it depends on, first of all, can you afford to bootstrap? Let's say you're
Yeah.
like, I have a great idea. I need two engineers to work on this. Um, well, can you go without a salary for a few months? Can you pay these two engineers salaries for 2 months? Remember, they're also less likely to want to work with you if you have not raised money because they're also looking for validation that you're a good founder, that you can raise money in the future and scale the company. So bootstrapping is fine, but it typically works when it's like you and one other buddy, one other founder. The two of you are like, yes, building out this proof of concept, doing this market research before we raise the money makes it much more likely that we can raise money. So that's a good reason to wait for a bit. Sometimes whether you raise or not is just driven by financial constraints. If you need to, hire a team, at least in today's world, you need to pay the team. The days of like, oh, software engineers will work for nothing for a startup, they're long gone because money is
Yeah.
so easy to raise. And so it's really those things that decide whether you should raise or not. But I would say there's, as I was saying earlier, there's a ton of value in these relationships, in the social validation that raising money brings.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. You mentioned it a few minutes ago, and I think it makes, well, it's probably one of the hardest things about working anywhere, never mind doing a startup, is either finding a co-founder and then building a team. So what's your advice and thoughts around that?
creating a startup is really, really hard. And it's one of those things that unless you've gone through it, you don't really understand. You know,
Totally.
and it's it's just it's hard. There are lots of obstacles along the way. It's also incredibly lonely. As a startup founder, you have all kinds of fears every day. Will my company survive? Will this person work out? Will people actually adopt and pay for this product that I am creating? You're racked with self-doubt
Yeah.
constantly. And So this is where a co-founder is incredibly helpful, precisely because the journey is just emotionally really difficult, and you want someone that balances you. In my mind, an ideal co-founder is one that amplifies your strength and minimizes your weakness. So a certain amount of self-reflection is in order. If you're the kind of person that is liable to take too much risk, you want someone that's a little bit more analytical, that's a little bit more measured. If you are more the, like measure twice and cut once kind of person, then you want to make sure that you have somebody that's a little bit more dialed up on the risk side. But at all times, you need to have trust in your co-founder,
Yeah.
because this is a long journey. And it's really important that you have absolute trust in each other. And so I would say this is like advice that I always give to any startup founder, which is don't do it alone. It's harder than you think. It's lonelier than you think. Find a person that complements you. Find a person that brings out the best in you. Ideally, you'll work with them for some time so that you're not like starting completely afresh. Um, but having somebody like that, in my mind, is really important for anybody's startup journey.
No, I think that's really good advice. And you probably know where I'm going with this is any advice for actually finding a co-founder? Because sure, obviously, a lot of times people have worked with a bunch of people before. Sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't, but actually finding somebody that they know, they trust, and can potentially work with for 3, 5, 10 years is daunting. It's kind of like a marriage.
It is a marriage, and I agree with you. It's very daunting. This is why I'm saying like being part of a company. Maybe it's somebody that you have done projects with in
Right.
college. As you know, that's a pretty visceral experience. I remember my college projects, always late night, always late, always scrambling. But to a certain extent, you want to work with someone that you've sort of been through a battle with, that you've been through a grind with, so you know what they are under stress. The thing is, like, all of us bring our like good selves to work and to social media, but the real us is often hiding and only shows up when there's a lot of stress or when there are problems. The more you can identify people in your life, whether it's in college or whether it's in your first job, that you've actually worked together with, and you go like, ha, this person is a good complement. We actually are stronger together. Um, those are the best kinds of relationships. The other thing that I would say is, let's say you don't have these, you're like, I need to find a co-founder, but it's, he or she is not from work, and I didn't get to go to school with them. And the other alternatives are things like do little projects. There are lots of things to explore, so maybe it is someone that you get connected to personally on a Reddit or a Discord, maybe even just putting together an idea for a new company, even if you have no intention of, even if you don't think you're going to follow through with it. Those are like good experiences. You learn a lot just by working together. It's one of those things where, if you do projects together, if you do proposals together, you're going to learn about whether someone is the right fit for you.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. And so you obviously grew a team to 50 plus people now, like you mentioned earlier.
That's right. That's right.
Walk us through advice actually hiring people because sure, like you found your co-founder, maybe you raise money, you have to hire a team of 3, 5, 10. you know.
Yep. Yeah, I think hiring is obviously pretty tricky, especially in today's age where all the big companies are paying exceptionally well, and startups are a lot of risk. One thing that we did early on at Neva was we decided to be really generous with stock for the early people that bet big
Okay.
on Neva. Our option pool after a Series A was 25%, which is unheard
Wow.
of in the Valley.
Yeah,
But
that's
our
it.
deal was like, hey, we are in this journey together. The people that bet early on us should be a significant owner in the company. So we have a generous stock compensation, policy from very early on. And this is something that Vivek and I, my co-founder and I, believe very strongly in. And even for the later people, we also did things like do these things called recourse loans to help them buy the stock so that they get long-term
Ah,
capital gains treatment. So you want to set up things structurally so that there is real value being created for the folks that join your team. But beyond that, you want people that have expertise, that are unafraid, that are like willing to get things done quickly without um, compromising every single thing. What do I mean by that? There's one class of people that will basically be like, well, you want a new system, I have to design this, I have to write a doc, we have to do this carefully, we have to test it thoroughly, and then we should figure out like how we build a product on top of it. It'll be bankrupt way before that. And there is the other archetype, which is like, forget it. We should use the first available thing that we can find, just jump on, do something, and forget the testing. Nothing matters. It's like, let's just go. Um, Now, it is important to de-risk any startup, meaning, you should be talking about the product idea with lots of people. You should be pitching ideas to customers, to lots of people. Frederick Kerest, one of the co-founders of Okta, who was an EVA advisor, told this to my face. He was like, Sridhar, I don't care who you are and how good you think you are. You need to be meeting with multiple customers every single week. You should be pitching relentlessly. That's an idea that that is something that I would ask every startup founder or founders to do, which is you should be pitching these ideas. But
that's actually really
independent
good
of
advice.
that, 100%, they're like always pitching. And in fact, the most successful startup founders, they actually like get people to buy their product even before it's ready. Uh,
Yeah.
you need a little bit more experience to be able to pull off stuff like that. But it goes back to the core idea of identify the problem, identify the people that have the need, and talk to them early on. But coming back to hiring, you need people in a startup that are a balance between like hack, 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 never think about tomorrow. And the people that are always like, well, we need to get this right because if we are successful and we have problems, that's an issue, right?
Yeah.
So the answer is somewhere in the middle. You want people that are fearless, but you also want people that know how to cut corners, how to take risks. And these are things that you can explicitly measure for. We also place a lot of emphasis on just like inner drive. Um,
Okay.
what I mean by that is it's one thing for someone to come and tell you how great they are, but are they going to work weekends? Are they going to put in the
Yeah.
extra hour to actually get the work done? Or is it more like, hey, it's 5 o'clock, I need to stop?
Yeah.
And startup again, the startups are very hard. You need to put in a lot of hours into them. And people don't realize like it really takes a lot of effort. Startups sound sexy, but if you want like total predictability in your life, big company 9 to 5 job works much better. So you want to look for this. You want driven people, not the ones that will burn themselves out. It's like that's always an issue. I worry about that personally for myself constantly because I work hard. But on the other hand, do they have the drive that says they're going to get stuff done? And then in terms of the actual mechanics, your social networks matter. We hire a lot of college students, and they
Okay.
are spectacular. They're like so fearless. Some of them have done programming for like 7, 8 years. They're very good coming out of school. Many of our new folks at Neva have done exceptionally well for us.
Interesting. No, I agree. 100%. I think that's actually some really good advice. But you touched on something that I want to get your thoughts on is obviously you were busy during your Google days. You're probably busier now, arguably, maybe some similar. How do you make sure you and the rest of the team don't burn out when they are working those long hours?
I mean, it's important that everybody understands that we live in a social world. We have
Yeah.
connections to our families. They matter. It's not like we live completely isolated existence. And you know, uh, like taking time off and being there for the people around you matters a lot. My kids are grown up now, they're like 21 and 23. But when I used to pick them up from school or I used to drop them, I would make it a point to not be on my phone, to always
Right.
just be for them, to actually make their dinners, to be around. Weirdly, I've actually walked out of meetings with like Larry and Sergey
Wow.
because I had to go pick up my kids, and I'd be like, well, these people are showing no signs of finishing this meeting. I just got to go. But it is a culture that tolerated that. So we are a culture that understands that, people have family lives. It does matter, and it's not an either or. And so yes, there's an expectation of hard work. I work every weekend. I'm like neither proud nor not proud about it. It's just who I am. I like my work.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, if I have to take a weekend off because I'm doing something with my family, that's also fine.
Yeah.
So I think it's the drive with the understanding that just personal well-being and family is important. I actually tell my team very clearly, family is first. Okay, the deep connections that you need to have with the people around you sort of matters a lot, but that does not mean that you can't also work hard. Part of the trick is like
Yeah.
how you balance the two. I'm not claiming I have a perfect answer. I clearly go through phases where I'm working too hard and I'm kind of being cranky with the people around me. I try to recognize that and tone it back because it's really not healthy and is indicative of future burnout.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. I also think too, the funny thing that I find that works for me sometimes is just like if you are getting grumpy or whatever, just like you need to tell me. So like for sure I recognize that. And also just like you being um like the head of Niva, being able to and fostering that culture from the complete top all the way down, right? And being open and honest about even that you still struggle with a balance sometimes, right? Because one week you might be able to take a bunch of time off, other weeks it's like, no, you know what? I need to maybe take a few hours off with the kids in the evening, pick them up, have dinner, but then you're like back at it at
Come
eight
back.
o'clock at night for a few
That's right.
hours, right? Like you
That's
need
right.
to figure
That's right.
out what works
That's
for
right.
you. And I also think too, it's always weird to me. It's like, well, if I'm sitting on the couch answering email and the kids are watching the show, it's like, am I working? Yes, but like not really. As long as you're
That's
not
right.
like constantly on your phone, I think you can kind of balance that a bit better. But I'm curious, because you've done this for a while now and you've grown these teams, is there any other advice that you would give to people now that you have a product that a lot of people are using? How do you actually decide on the features that actually get added into Niva? Because like you said, you're doing all these customer research to see like what people want. And I even suggested something to you before we
Yeah,
even started recording.
absolutely.
It's like, how do you decide what actually makes it into the product roadmap, what you're not going to do, and then what maybe you will do, because you get feature requests all the time.
I mean, there's a process. First of all, you have to look at the feedback, you have to look at the usage, and that'll tell you a lot about what people want. And and a startup, Neeva is a little bit unusual because it has such a broad surface area.
Right.
But startups typically should make sure that they have like the one thing that customers absolutely cannot do without.
Right.
It's like that one critical need that people are like, I really need this. That's the mythical like product market fit. There are various techniques that people have for measuring it. As I said, you start with a hypothesis, you sort of create a product, you get some customers to be using it, um, and then there is this well-established methodology where you go back to these people and ask them, how unhappy will you be if you were to not have the product? And then this theory is that you look at the people that say they would be really unhappy, they'd be really disappointed if your product, if Niva were to disappear. And then you
Right.
ask them, what makes Niva indispensable for you? And then you iterate based on that. You do two kinds of iteration. One, you look at the characteristics of the people that said that they'd be very disappointed and try and get more people like that, sort of growing out your customer base. And then you talk to the people that come back and tell you they'd be somewhat disappointed, but not like really disappointed. And then you ask them, what will it take for you to really want Neva, for you to be really disappointed if it were not to exist? And so you can look at like the feature requests that these people have and see, is there cohesion there that will convert more people into the very disappointed camp? So what you're doing is you're starting with this germ of like the idea, the product that makes you indispensable for people. You try and get more people like that. You look at the surrounding cohort of people and ask them, what will it take for you to become like strong proponents of the product? And you put that into the feature roadmap. The process is messier than I make it sound, but this is like a well-established methodology for achieving product market fit.
Chet, I'm always happy to chat with you because you always have some really good insights. So welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. It's awesome to be here. And I'm not sure about the good insights, but definitely wacky insights.
It's good. It's good. So you've had an astronomically successful career. Do you want to maybe give us a little bit of an overview, and then let's talk about kind of building your startup, scaling and grinding, because you've had a lot of success at DataStax and you came to the company later.
Absolutely. So the journey starts a long time ago, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. Born and brought up in Calcutta, India. Really got inspired by this book that Mike Moritz wrote, who ran Sequoia but was a Times reporter, called The Little Kingdom, and really wanted to come and work for Steve Jobs. Took a bunch of computer classes, came to the US, and started working for his new company called Next way back in '87. My first job out of college was actually working for Next. And that, by the way, was what fundamentally shaped my career, right? And I think Next was the highest concentration of smart people I have ever met. And most people that worked at Next during that time would tell you the same thing, right? That it really shaped shaped my mind on A, being 20 yards away from Steve Jobs, but B, hanging out with all these smart people. Since then, a bunch of different roles, did my own company, went and ran business development, ran engineering, ran marketing, bunch of different things, and landed up in being the GM for WebLogic integration at BEA, which was a huge success for BEA itself. The stock was $5 and went up to 14 and was very, very successful. And then went and felt like I was ready, ran an open source company, joined Apogee. It was called Sanoa Systems there, obviously took it public, and was part of Google for a while, and then landed at DataStax. So that's generally the journey. But what is most remarkable about the journey is a couple of things that people should, everybody has their own journey. Their path is their own and they define it. But what's really, really important is believing in the mission. The second thing is making sure that you're hanging out with people that you want to hang out with, because it's not just about winning at all costs. It's also actually working with the right kinds of folks because you have the right memories. But the third one is just as important as having fun around it, right? Because there's going to be a ton of ups and downs, and just making sure you have a lot of fun while you're walking the path is really important.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, though, because you guys have obviously seen a ton of growth, what advice do you give to people to get through those hard times and keep scaling and keep grinding till you can see some success? And how do you kind of evaluate what you need to change or keep doing along the way? Because I think that can be really tricky.
Yeah, so I generally think, and I've had this framework for years, and I've used this across the board. Execution is what it's about, right? Smart ideas, there are lots of them, right? You drive up and down the 101 in the Bay Area. There are lots of really awesome PhDs who have great ideas. The question is, how do you execute on them and make them successful? And I think execution comes down to three things. It comes down to strategy, operations, and people. And so whether I'm starting down a path, a new path, forking a path, or I'm actually thinking about how and what has happened and how I want to reconsider things, I always go down the, have you thought about this the right way, i.e. the strategy? Do we have the right metrics? Because if you don't inspect them, if you don't think about the right metrics, it won't happen. And the third thing is, do you have the right people? And sometimes in reverse order, but as things, so you start there, right? You start by saying, so DataStax is a really good example. Let me take a little detour. A $130 million company when I came on board in the database market, great product market fit from Cassandra point of view. Total addressable market is awesome and growing. Great people, they built the Cassandra database. But the fourth part was something I had to come to terms with and felt very comfortable with, which is this concept called durability, right? And durability is about culture and P&L. Can you create, without squinting, right? Without believing, can you really think about $1 billion company, right? And so I had that thesis when I joined. It was a $130 million company, and we came up with a point of view and said, this is how we want to change it. These are the new people we want. This is the new strategy. This is what we want to continue and go from there. And as we were talking earlier, having a point of view and a plan, and then executing to that plan with the existing folks and the new folks, while focusing on developers and CIOs, right? Because remember, you're doing this for somebody, right? And then seeing the results come through is extremely gratifying. To answer your question more specifically, whenever I find there's a grind and whenever I find that things are not going well, I always start with my true North Star. And my North Star is, how do developers think about this? And how do CIOs think about this? Because if I start from an outside-in perspective, it shapes me differently than thinking about, oh, but we did this and this person did that. So the blame game goes away because it's not about our egos. It's about serving an outside constituent.
Interesting. I think that's actually a really refreshing perspective on that, right? A lot of times as a leader, it's easy to say, well, it's so-and-so's fault or it's that person's fault. But at the end of the day, it's just like, it almost doesn't really matter whose fault it is. It's just like, we have this problem. How are we going to solve it? I also think, though, and you mentioned something that I want to dive a little bit deeper into is, okay, you have this successful startup, and it's not even really a startup anymore. It's a real company making a lot of money. Yeah. Trying to change what's working and trying new things has to be scary because you don't want to wreck what's working and what's you've already been built. So by the way, that is hard as hell. Just hard as hell and scary as hell, right? Because it's scary because I'll just talk about DataStax, right? It's a $130 million business. Not many companies become that big. That's a pretty sizable company. But at the same time, it has a potential of being $1 billion. Right. So you have this beautiful tension on what was done right that you want to continue and what you have to do differently, because you cannot just change everything. And what lands up happening is you never want to, and this is why I keep going back to the outside-in perspective, you never want it to become about what was done in the past and what needs to be done in the future. You want it to be done on what do developers and what do CIOs care about. But so you have an outside-in perspective, then you have a common point of view on what is working and what needs to change. And if you have that common point of view, it doesn't matter what your tenure has been, whether you joined yesterday or whether you've joined 10 years ago, you're talking about the people you serve, not the people that have worked at DataStax for a long time. And I think that was something we implemented very strongly. I have a saying that, we all work for the same company, right? And we are here to serve developers who build products and CIOs who buy them. Right. So how do you get in front of the right developers and CIOs to actually implement some of these things, right? Because you get a million feature requests. Clients say, if you implement these things, I'll give you $1 million or $1,000. It doesn't really matter. So how do you know like how to not chase your tail, but actually implement things that are going to move the product forward, keep your customers happy, and onboard new customers?
Yeah, it is an art for sure, Kevin. I think you know that, right? That's why you're asking the question. It is not. A lot of people would start by saying A/B testing is really important. Being data-driven is really important. The other ones would say you should know where the puck is going to go. The other ones would say you should be where the puck is going to show up, right? And I think all of those are true. Just so I think it starts, I break it up into two parts, right? Which is, do you have a strong point of view on how markets are going to move?
Interesting.
So, and I think that is important. For example, cloud is fairly significant, right? Open source is fairly significant. Serverless is fairly significant. These are three things. APIs are fairly significant. If you merge them all together, you say those are big moves that the market's going to make, right? And so we need to make sure that our point of view incorporates those big moves. And that is not going to come from talking to people. That comes from us being technologists and understanding how markets move, right? We've seen movies like this before, even though every movie is different. We've seen the client server game. We've seen the internet game. We've seen EAI reform. We've seen how the SQL market grew up, things like that. So, history is a great learning experience, right? You figure out what you learn from there and you come up with a point of view. And that very much is inside out, because you have to be believers. You cannot have McKinsey come and do a study for you and tell you where the markets are going to be. You have to have a point of view from the smart people sitting inside the cathedral, if I may. But very quickly after that, you have to take it to the bazaar and make sure that you are iterating on your great ideas, right? So that you can actually refine them as you go. A lot of people get confused. They either go to the bazaar directly and say, what do you want, right? Nobody would have said they wanted a car. Everybody would have said they want faster horses, right? We all know the story really well. So you have to have a point of view and then say, now I have this point of view. Tell me what you would want from my point of view. And then you iterate really quickly to make it happen. So that's the first half. That is the big idea game, right? Once you have that in place, the refining happens exactly the opposite way. You flip it, because all the refinement happens in the bazaar. It is small tweaks that developers ask you to do, but you always have a framework on how markets move. So my perspective is, the original ideas, the big strategy, or what I call the big animal pictures need to happen. That needs to happen. You start inside out, but refine them, in the bazaar. And then all things where you have to iterate quickly have to happen all the way in the bazaar, connected to your big animal pictures, but that's it.
Interesting. You mentioned something that I also really have thought a lot about recently is, okay, you're at this size now. You need to obviously grow the team. Some people obviously will stay along for the journey. Some people will go. How do you make sure you foster a good team, hire smart people, and people that are passionate about the product and what you're trying to build? Because growing a team is actually really, really challenging.
I think attracting talent is hard. I think if I look at my time on a weekly basis, a large portion of that is talking to our folks internally about what we're trying to do. And by the way, bringing people on board, always improving, right? Always improving. But what is harder than attracting talent is making sure the talent is aligned. Right. Because the absolute last thing you want really smart people pulling the company in different directions. Because the way this happens, I say this a lot, right? Which is, companies become successful because of the power of the will. But the will has to be one will. It cannot be 600 different people having 600 different wills and all going in a different direction. And so a very important, you all know this, it's really smart people. But the second thing is making sure they're aligned. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time on is making sure that everybody understands what our mission is, who are we here to serve, and how we are going to serve them.
Right.
Because I think it's really important that, and we spend an inordinately high amount of time to make sure that people are completely aligned with the mission, who are we serving, and how are we going to serve them. Because if there's a misalignment, we spend a lot of time debating and making sure that there is alignment. Because once you take really smart people and get them aligned and focused on a goal, magic happens. Magic happens. By the way, again and again and again. But for that to happen, you have to make sure you create the right environment. There's a lot of communication. The mission is clear. The recipes are very clear.
No, I actually think that's really good advice. So I'm curious, obviously you've had some low points in your career because everybody does. How have you gotten through, and what advice do you give to get through those kind of low points? Because we all know running a startup can be a roller coaster ride.
I really think that I was going to say, I feel I'm very lucky, right? All the time. Any given day, I feel like if I'm not the luckiest person alive, I'm at least the second luckiest person alive, right? So, but what do I attribute that luck to? It comes down to, somebody asked me this question a long time ago, Chet, what makes you unique?
Okay.
Right. And my answer, after about pausing for 45 seconds, was I believe sooner than anybody else does.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I go back when there's a tough time that happening, you miss a quarter, your stock goes down, really shit happens, your customers are down and it's Black Friday. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. I go back into just coming back to a simple thing. Do I believe? That's the question I ask myself. Do I believe in what I'm doing? Right? Do I believe in the mission? Right? Then the next question is, do I believe in the people around me? And can I inspire them with my belief to get out of it? And then the third one is really simple, Kevin. The first one is asking yourself. The second one is talking to people around you. But the third one is simple. It's called execution. Put one foot in front of the other. So one of the things that you learn is that no specific event actually defines the company. It is a series of events that define a company. So what you land up doing, it's just like a golfer, right? No single shot defines their round. Right. And so the quicker you can get over a bad shot and learn from it, the more successful you will be. And so I make about 20 decisions a day, 10 decisions a day. I won't know the results for that for 9 months.
Right.
Statistically, it's impossible for them to be right. It's just, I'm going to make bad decisions. The question is, am I being thoughtful? And secondly, how quickly can I recover from them? So whenever bad decisions happen, the one thing I tell CEOs and entrepreneurs is, don't beat yourself up. The same person that made 100 good decisions made a couple of bad ones. Right? It's okay. Just go back to thinking, do you believe? Do you believe in can you inspire the people around you to believe as well? And just put one foot in front of the other and start executing.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. I'm curious then, in your opinion, when should somebody look at maybe pivoting? And pivoting doesn't have to mean a full 180 in your business, but sometimes we all know you come up with this idea, you start building it, you're passionate about it, you believe in it, and you start getting some customer feedback, or maybe you don't get some customers, or maybe you get a little bit of customers. We all know that your original idea ends up usually not being even maybe your version 1 or your version 3. So how do you know when to pivot? Because it can be really challenging, because sometimes we're stubborn as founders.
Yeah. Always. I am, a lot of people would say, and it's a cliche now, always be paranoid and things like that, because you're going to get disrupted by somebody in a garage. I truly believe that. My take is, if you are, especially when things are not going really well, just it's a simple thing. Everything that you see, everybody else is seeing. There's nothing special about what you are seeing that somebody else cannot see. If you're seeing market traction, there are at least 100 people out there that are seeing the same market traction that you are. You just don't know who they are. So my point is, there's nothing special that you know or don't know that is happening out there, right? You just may be executing a lot better. You may have better engineers. It just could be a bunch of things, but realize everybody is seeing it. So the question is, when do you pivot? You should be thinking about reinventing yourself as often as you possibly can without disrupting your execution on a day-to-day basis. If you do not have wacky ideas on how to reinvent yourself on a regular basis, somebody else will reinvent you.
Sure.
Right?
You rather be the
constantly innovate. You constantly are innovating and challenging yourself to the point where you're like, no, I think that idea is a good one, but let me wait for 3 months. Right? But if you are not challenging yourself, you will fall into, and by the way, that includes second guessing decisions you made 6 months ago. Now, you don't do that in a large forum and things like that, but you always ask yourself, that was a good decision 6 months ago. Is it still a good decision today? Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say, like, it's always kind of dawned on me a number of years ago. If you got to think that you're going to get put out of business one day.
Yes.
And if you should be the one to put yourself out of business, because then you keep going, right? Like,
and a lot of people get confused about pivoting, right? Oh my God, I'm not growing as fast, or somebody's not buying my product, or it's not being used. My take is you should be pivoting. You should be thinking about pivoting at exactly the time when you're highly successful, right? So the word is, and I think you said it, right? Pivoting doesn't mean that you have to pivot the entire business, but my point is you should always be innovating on what you're trying to do and thinking about market dynamics and things like that.
Sure. So how do you foster that innovation thinking culture? Because it can be challenging for an employee to go to the CEO, and this is maybe a bad example, but raise their hand in a meeting and say, that's a dumb idea. I think we should do X.
The thing about awesome technologists is that they're awesome technologists. What that means is they're geeks and they love tinkering and playing. So phenomenal engineers actually like to do new things, to run towards a new shiny object. And so you have to find a way to not do the haves and the have-nots. You cannot say, I have a group of people working on new stuff and I have a group of people working on old stuff. That doesn't work.
That's
you will
smart,
not motivate the right engineers, right? So, but just to be clear, you have to find a way that you get people to focus on the mission at hand while also cultivating the future. Right. And so that is, and that is the part that you have to do, because what you don't want to do, as we talked about this earlier, what you don't want is an engineer to be out of misalignment and actually thinking about the future and not thinking about the present, because without the present, you have no pivot. You have to do the task at hand. The task at hand, literally at hand, has to be done really well while you're thinking about the future. And that balance is what companies completely screw up, right? They think about it, and what ends up happening is they innovate too much and they forget the current customers. And this is where, Kevin, I always remind myself and everybody around me, don't forget who you're serving.
Right.
You're serving the developer, you're serving the CIO. That's one. The second thing I remind folks all the time is minds are far more mature than markets are. So when you think an idea is happening in the market today, it probably is 2 years away or 3 years away, because markets are, by the way, they are far more intelligent because they have many minds attached to them, but they just take a while to mature. Right? You can think about an idea and you're ready to go. The more minds you add to it, it slows down the process. And so you've got to keep those and do the balance. There's no clear equation on how to do this, but I fully expect all the leaders at DataStax to focus on execution and be able to focus on innovation. Right? The expectation is that you should be able to balance both.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, everybody's just trying to make the product better. And I think when you have the more opinions from a diverse workforce, the better, right? Because, and it sounds so stupid, but the example that always comes to mind for me is you take the colors like red, white, and blue. It's like, well, everybody in North America is like, well, that's America.
Yeah.
But if you go to like other parts of the world, they'd be like, well, that's France, right? That might be the first thought that comes to their mind. And like, one's not better than the other. It's just depending on where you are geographically, you look at the same thing completely different sometimes. And thinking about those was really, really eye-opening to me, right? And having those perspectives. So how do you foster that and try to get as many diverse people? Because we all know there's a challenge of diversity in technology right now.
Super. By the way, I love your flag colors, and it's awesome. It was the way DataStax was before I joined, and so it is really interesting that if you look at our engineers, they're all over the world. All over the world. A large portion of our engineering team that works on our core database product actually is in Europe, right? Okay. So we get diversity in spades because of that, right? And by the way, a large number of women engineers as well. We are increasing the numbers.
That's awesome.
But I think we already have that, right? And I think we continue to add more and more people in different geographies, opening up a thing in India. We are hiring some more folks in Singapore, Japan, so all over the place that we bring to it. And the question has to be, it is not just getting the right people. It has got to do with two other things. One is, are you creating the right environment? Because as I remind myself almost on a daily basis, it's not about diversity only, it's about inclusion. Because you could have a very diverse team, but if you're not creating the right environment for people to speak up and participate, it's not very meaningful.
Right.
Right. You want to create an environment where instead of pulling people out, they are participating because they think it is their product that they're trying to build. So one is you have to have the right team. Second thing, you have the right environment. But the third thing is you have to have leaders for whom this is front and center. Right. If they do not lead with this point of view, that it is important to have the people, you can do everything else and it doesn't matter.
Sure. So how have you embraced having a team globally, and maybe talk about why and how kind of maybe open source has allowed you to foster that? Because I think so many companies, especially startups, could leverage open source a lot more than they do. And then with that, I think becomes that inclusion and sometimes that diversity because it's spread out across the globe. You get that automatically.
It is, it's funny. There are a couple of things about open source that I find super interesting, and they are not related to a business model around open source. That comes later. One is you get immense amount of diversity, right? Because there could be a developer in Brazil, there could be one in Vietnam, there could be one in Romania, there could be one in France, there could be one in New Jersey, right? And you can get that, and that goes really well. But the second thing you get is meritocracy.
Okay.
Right? It is not just that you belong, it is you have to show up and your code does the talking. I have always loved those two parts of open source, right? Because there is diversity and there's meritocracy. With meritocracy comes a lot of pride. And so what are the benefits of those two? You get software that is fairly hardened. You get software that really works right across the board for many different use cases, because all the contributors use it for their different use cases. You get software that is like, literally it is better than the 5 people sitting in a room and making it happen, because a lot of people from diverse backgrounds have made it happen. If you do that correctly, you also get a lot of early adopters of the technology. There are engineering-led companies like Netflix, like Facebook, like Uber, that go off and take these technologies and use them for mission-critical apps. And so they lead the way to make it happen. When you get those combinations, what becomes really useful is you can actually build a business around it. But what a lot of people, and there are a lot of companies out there who have tried open source, but they have compromised the diversity part, the meritocracy part, the openness part. And the moment you do that, it's not an open source project anymore.
Right.
My point is you have to leverage it, not control it. And people forget that, right? And I think if you can actually play by the rules of what a free or open source project is, then you can actually have a great business. And there are many good examples of companies that have done that. Red Hat is doing that, has done that for years. Databricks is doing that. DataStax is doing that. So we have a bunch of really awesome examples.
No, I think that's really good advice. Is there any other kind of final advice that you would like to give kind of entrepreneurs as they're kind of growing and scaling their business that you found really useful?
Two pieces of advice I give them. One is, I've mentioned this, but I'll be more succinct. Believe, inspire, execute. That recipe works in almost every scenario. And the second thing I would tell them is have some fun, because every time you think it's going to be the end of the world, it probably isn't, right? So just to, take yourself seriously, but not too seriously, right? Because you cannot laugh when things are not going well, but just remember that too shall pass, right? And so as long as you have the right intentions, you have the right people, and you're building something that people want, I think things will generally work out.
Hampus, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm always excited to talk with you. You have a ton of really good advice. You've done some really amazing stuff, but maybe before we get into all that, can you give us a quick background on yourself, and then we'll dive into what we're going to chat about today?
Yeah, I think the super brief background is what defines me a lot is I'm born in a family with essentially 5 grown-ups. And it's a bit of a joke, but 3 older brothers that are 11, 9, and 8 years older than I am, and then of course my 2 parents. And both my older brothers are professors in abstract mathematics, and then my parents are, one is within physics and nuclear physics, and my mom is in a geneticist, which means when I grew up, it's my first 10 years of my life, it was do big science or what are you doing? I think I've never when I was a kid, I've never seen it. I hadn't seen we didn't really have a TV until I was 10. There was no crossword press or anything. Anything you did which was not productive was a waste of time. That's kind of how I grew up. And I think what was great about it for me was I think that two things were great. One is I kind of got schooled in this among grown-ups that do big stuff. So I had to kind of quote unquote grow up quickly in some senses, which I think is both good and bad. But I think another thing which was great about it for me was that I became a human hacker very, very early, because right. I think that when you're 10 or whatever, 5 or 10 probably, but when you're 10 and everyone around you is a grown up and you want to watch whatever, James Bond, Spider-Man, whatever you want to watch, right? The thing is your parents and your 3 older siblings would be you can't do this. It's 11 p.m. You can't watch this movie. All of my mind when I was 10 years old was how do I get you to say it's okay? Right. Which meant that I was when I was 10 to kind of 15, I was just obsessed about what makes people tick.
Right.
So I spent all of my living time just thinking, what do you want and what can I do that gets you to say okay to me to be on this ride? And I think that was great for me, because it really, then I went into engineering and did science and stuff. And I think what's common for a lot of people that are from the heavy STEM or engineering backgrounds is that you don't tend to think a lot about people. You kind of think is if we build this cool trinket, they'll just come and it's going to work out. And I think that I had that from my school, that's what they told you, that's what you did, you build some machine learning, la la la. But then it's all of my brain was but who's the person? How will they use it?
Right.
What is this about? How do I hire people? And all of that. And I think it was just such a great benefit that I ended up starting a company and scale that from 6 friends, 180 people, didn't bring in venture capital, got acquired by BlackBerry, and then landed another thing for me, which was I never thought that finance mattered, because my parents are kind of semi-finance illiterates, being science people. And then when BlackBerry acquired us, they kind of said, hey, do you want to run M&A for us? And they're just I can't even read a P&L statement. I don't you don't want me. Just no way you want me. I can build shit for you. I can lead teams for you. I can sell and do marketing for you. I can I can hire. I know science. I don't know if you need it. And they're just no, we want you to do M&A. I was okay, whatever. Shit. So I said yes, because I really like BlackBerry, and it was great because that catapulted me into another thing, which I knew that science can change the world. I knew that deep thinking can change the world. I knew engineering. I knew that all of these things. But I kind of felt finance? Like, what the heck do we have it? Like, what's the point? And I think that should have opened my eyes to realizing, like, hey, finance actually can change the world. Like, you can say that you don't want to do stuff and like put money behind that thing, or you can say you want to do stuff and you can put money behind that thing. And like that was really like a third formative period for me in my life, when I was like, opened my eyes to all these things where I realized these are just like, hey, if you can vote with dollars.
Interesting.
And it was great for me because like then like kind of went full circle. I kind of understood people, understand technology, understood finance. I think the final piece, which I'm completely still missing, is like regulation and policy and politics. I think that like that's like, if I do that, then I think that I can then try to do anything. But like, I feel like it's been such a great thing understanding like what makes the world go forward.
Fascinating. Okay. So obviously you've been through selling a company to a huge organization. You've done a ton of investments. What advice do you give people to actually getting sold? Because you have an interesting story selling to BlackBerry in their heyday.
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of things. I think that one, and then actually the funny thing, because I end up like, I mean, they acquired us, and I would say like we never like, it's funny because we never tried at all selling to BlackBerry. It was
Right.
like they called us and say, hey, we want to acquire you, and like people did. So like we were just like, yeah, whatever. I don't think like you're going to become a customer. But it's like I before then I had zero experience of like how you approach a big customer and say, or a big acquire and say we want to be bought by you. But then I think the funny thing is then I spent 2.5 years on the other side of the table thinking what we want to acquire. And then, of course, like every single investment banker in the world called BlackBerry, like, huge, like, company is like, hey, we want to sell you this thing or that. So it was a great thing on the other side. And then, I mean, I've done 100 plus investments, a lot of companies been acquired. I think it's been a really great experience looking at them and saying, like, either you need a soft landing, you have a strategical thing, yada, yada, all these things where I've realized, like, how do we do this? So, like,
Right.
I've been on both sides of the table, and also, like, the naive point that was the first time. So I think there are a couple of things. I think that, first of all, I think it's really, really, really hard to build something to be acquired. Like
Right.
it's almost impossible to say Google ought to be in the hotel business. We're going to make a hotel the way Google would want it and then flip it to Google. That
Right.
is like, it's a very, very hard situation, because the thing about acquisition is like, it's extremely much about time. It's
Okay.
like you like, the company is like a maelstrom of hell, like whatever company, like you're like a
Yeah.
large company is just like, it's total chaos of saying no to stuff. Because like, I mean, BlackBerry, 17,000 people when I was there.
Right.
Like 17,000 people that emailed me and said, hey, we can go acquire Adobe. Hey, we can go and like, take over this thing. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, you've got all your kind of like pet peeves and cool ideas. And my job a lot of times, of course, I was not in deciding this factor, right? I didn't run strategy, but just like, what are we going to do of all these great ideas? So the thing is, like, if you're calling a big company and saying, hey, we're running this like hotels, like Google want them, acquire us. Most of the time they would be like, what the? No, sorry. Like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you do, but we're not thinking about hotels at all. So I think there are a couple of ways to do that. I think that first of all is understanding, like, why would they buy you for real? So like
Okay.
the first lesson is like, never build to sell, because that's not going to work.
That's good advice.
And there are a lot of companies when they approach us, like when I'm like as an investor, they say, yeah, here are exit opportunities. I'm just like, remove that slide, please.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
if you're thinking about raising $1 million or $5 million and you're talking about acquisitions now, like, what the heck? So like, I think the way to think is like, we're going to build to that. We're going to build this amazing company that's going to win. It's going to be top number in our company. And like, I can get into that actually. Let's super small tangent. I think when you're building a
Sure.
company, I would say you always get into what I call stall points. Like, you're growing the
Okay.
company, it's like it's trajectory upwards, and then suddenly it flattens out. Look, whatever, like MRR, whatever, like whatever metric out, it's like just becomes flat a bit, and like then it takes off, and then it flattens out, takes off. And the things when it flats out a bit, it usually like it can be like just timing. It can be like you need to hire more people. It can be marketing, it can be every kind of things. The way to get out of that thing are essentially have three choices. Either you just grit through it, just like you just keep hacking the thing you're doing, like just it's timing, it's like seasonal, whatever. Number two is like you acquire something to get out of that problem. And I can
Right.
get out of like the three things you can acquire later. And then the third one is like you become part of the big team. Like, you suddenly realize that like we cannot be bigger unless we also have the hardware, or we cannot be bigger unless we are the automotive manufacturer, whatever it is. And like, you can be bigger, but you can never like get that explosive curve, because like something in the market is stopping you. Like, be it prices, be it like whatever, legal or whatever. Like, something just makes it very hard for you to like become humongous. So I think that when you're at that stall points, grit, acquire, or be acquired. And I
Right.
think that there are times when people pick up the phone and they say, hey, we're reached a stall point. We're just struggling through this, like, and we would actually be open to joining you. I think that is a legit point. Like that is okay. Like if I run M&A, if somebody calls me, like you're not going to flip the company for the optimal valuation or something. Because like if you want to set like the optimal valuation is when your curve goes up. That's like when people are like, let's buy them before the curve goes like too far north. But if you call somebody when you're at a stall point, you can say, hey, we want to change the world. Like we want people to have the best hotel experience in the world. We realize that we just cannot get further unless we get to buy a lot of property. We just don't have the cash for that. Like we're thinking about listing or acquiring, but then we're realizing, hey, you people at Airbnb, you have the other end of the spectrum. I'm not sure this might be relevant to you, but I'd just love to have this strategic conversation. I would say it's a slim chance because it's about timing, but the person at the other side of the table is way more interested if you're actually admitting that we're at a stall point. Like I think choice number, and also like choice number 2, we just grit through it. Just like it's not that you're like we're not running out of cash. It's just like the thing is that it's just like we want to solve this problem fully, and you're like, if I'm the hotel company, you're part of my solution to solve my problem.
Interesting.
And sure, you're going to acquire us, but that's just not my goal. My goal is to solve the problem. You're my part of the solution to solve it. So I think that is like that kind of works, because then like you're not like, if you say very transactionally, I want the cash and then I'm going to leave to Malibu, they're just like, what the fuck, I don't want you around. But if you're saying, no, I want to work with this for 20 years. You're my engine. Like I've got the whole thing. I just need more of what you have. They're just like, this person could drive a big business for us. So that's like the one thing. And then I think if you zoom into what you could acquire, that also, of course, is exactly what the other side is thinking about. And I would say like you can only acquire essentially, there are 3 things of a company, and you toss the other 2 kind of. Like you can acquire markets. Like you can just, I want to buy you because I get shitloads of customers. Or I want to buy you because I get a lot of know-how. Like you have people that can, like, maybe we're an old school company and we need to modernize. Like I acquire staff because they're just modern. Like I'm simplifying it, but you know what I mean? It's like you see that like, and it could be all the way to like acqui-hires, which is like you just want talent, but it could be just, it's really hard to hire people who've got like whatever remote work, and we're part of the remote work company. We're acquiring this fairly large remote work first company to essentially change ourselves to remote work, for example. The third one is like you acquire pure IP. It's very rare nowadays, but like I just want to acquire these patents, and like I don't need the people, and like you don't have, like I don't care about customers. And I think that most of the time when people acquire you, they essentially buy one of these 3, and they're kind of going to toss the other 2.
Interesting.
So a lot of times, like, you know, if you take the Google example, the Google a lot of times, like they very often buy know-how. They essentially say, hey, I want to buy all the people, like we're going to build this new platform, this whatever thingy-majiggy. I don't actually care about your customers yet. Like we're going to the app float around, and then we're going to turn it off within 5 years. And IP, yeah, we have patents, whatever, but like we got more patents, we got lawyers than you have employees. Like it doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
The thing is like, but the thing is to remember is like really when you tell the story about what you're doing is really realizing what they're actually buying. They're buying one of these 3. So I think that like zooms us out to like, you know, your stall points of like when you should sell, and then it's like, you know, thinking about what they're buying. And I think that the best way to get an acquisition going is then either like you're building this company. Let's say at your stall point, let's say you're growing, doesn't matter. Like you have a reason to sell. If you're scaling right now, you essentially have no reason to sell. Like if it just goes up, why the heck would you call somebody to acquire you now? Like it's just super weird. Like if somebody calls me, it's like we're doubling every month, we're thinking about selling. It's just like, sorry, what? Do you have less faith in your product than I would have? Like why would I take over your asset if you think that you should? If you want to jump ship, like why should I own your like this thing? So I think it's like, so the way to do it is usually figure out an intermediary. So like you might have your VC. So like your VC might like, you know, like if you have like a, you know, prominent tier 1 VC, they have links into all the M&A people. Like, I mean, like most of the even non-tier 1s have some link in. And then like they're just being saying, hey, I want to have a call with you. We have this portfolio company. It's really, really awesome. I know this thing. They do these super smart hotels. It's really, really rad. I don't know if you guys at Google have thought about it, but I think the know-how they have in this industry is really, really interesting. And I think that for us, the thing we feel right now is we think that they're growing like, you know, 100% year on year. We think that you're like 400 or 500% year on year. Team is stellar. The thing is they really need access to XYZ. And we're thinking about actually acquiring that asset. But then with the conversation we're having in the team here at the firm, like the VC firm, we're saying you have that asset in spades. So we'd love to set up a meeting with you two and the CEO and just figure out like, is there a match where there could be a strategic partnership or even like an M&A thing? Like it's like they're growing really quickly, but we see that there's so much more value to get out of this thing if you have the right assets. If you come in that conversation, if you're coming from an A, you're just saying, sure, happy to have a call with them. Like you don't like it's whatever. Like it's just like prominent VC calls you, sounds relevant, very nice like thing, quick question. It's like, sure, can you send me like a brief overview? So that, because like you're inundated with like just random emails, you don't want to have to call sometimes. So then like, somebody like, I maybe introduce to you, the CEO, to or I, the VC, send them an A person saying, here's a brief overview, just like whatever, the 3-slide deck or whatever. So they can just look at it and say, yeah, I get it. Like looks relevant, whatever. Then they do a call with you. And then now it's for you to think about the interesting thing. It's like, they are at the end of the day, they will buy, like whatever happens, they're acquiring you as the person, Like
Right.
if you're a douchebag that they don't want to work with, like they will not acquire you unless it's like they will die if they don't.
Yeah,
So super
fascinating.
important to remember is like you need to be the person that essentially says, I want to solve this problem. I'm all jazzed up. It's going to be amazing. La 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 la. And I want to do this. And like back to like, you can empower me to do this. I'm super excited. If you come in, like you are like, yo, you Google people, you never missed this. You missed the opportunity. You never got it. Like we're so smart. La 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 la. It's just like, I'm just like, why would I work with this douchebag? Like I'm not going to do it right.
Yeah,
the thing
fair.
is,
That's
and
good
of course, the
advice.
M&A people, they won't work with you daily. But the thing is, like, would they want to bring in that culture? So
Right.
the thing is, like, I think the way to think about it is like, these are your new colleagues. But then the problem comes is like, if you're going to be the super nice person, the problem is that the super nice person won't get the best deal. So the way I think about it is this weird intersection of three things. You have like dating, real estate, and like writing your whatever bachelor thesis or master thesis you did at school. So the thing about it is like you have to come in and you have to like be able to run this dating conversation where they need to feel like, I want to meet this person again, blah, 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 blah. You're nice, you get it, you're respectful of time, all the things. Like you're a good person. Number two, thesis. Like they need to feel like you got your shit. Like you're the person in the world that seems like we would love to have you on the team, not only because you're nice and get shit done, but because you know this industry in and out way better than anyone else. That's amazing. But then here comes the third part, which is like, you can't sound and be too transactional. You can't say, hey, we would sell for like 200 million, blah, 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 and negotiate really hard. They'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So there you usually need, like, you need someone else. So the way you do is usually is like, you point to your early investors, to your current investors, your whatever, your mom, like whatever. It's not you. You could join them for free. But the thing is that at the end of the day, like your original, like your early VCs are essentially saying they need an exit for more than 100 million to kind of sign this paper. And you saying like, I think I can like get them there, but like you're gonna make this so much easier for like in that like direction, right? And I think that you usually need this bad cop, which is this real estate, like quote unquote real estate person, like the very transaction, like the person who's not gonna be part of the deal later.
Right.
And this could be like your the fund that led your previous round, or even an angel. I mean, an angel will be like, I'm going to do this like 280x exit. So like, how can I negotiate that I would like need that? Like, it's silly, but you can, because like you can be the douchebag. You can come in and it's like, hey, I would never sell south of 100 million, and like they'd be like, what the fuck, this idiot. The thing is, they don't care because this idiot is going to be out of the room.
Right. Interesting.
So like, there's a limit how idiot you can be. Like, if your idiot's complicated stalling the deal, they're just gonna, this is too much mesh, I don't care. But if you're just being like, think about it when you're buying an apartment. Like the real estate agents, they're going to be nice, but they're also going to be like, you're going to be like, come on, can I buy it or not? But like, if you hate them, you won't do it. But if you just feel like, yeah, they're doing their job right, that's what you want. And I think that, so if you're selling a company at like, I don't know, double digits, the angels, like maybe early fund. If you're selling your company at like, triple, like if you're selling like 100 millions, I mean, like, so if you're 10 million exit, then your angels can do this for you. If you're selling a company for like 100 million, whatever, 300 million, 500 million, whatever, you probably need a corporate finance firm.
Okay.
Like you probably need like somebody whose job is to be a douchebag. Because like the VC can do it a bit, but the thing is when you're after these like huge deals with huge listed companies, then some firms have that capability, but otherwise like you pick up the phone and call a corporate dev company and say, hey, we have this term sheet from a big firm, we haven't signed it, we'd love to kind of, get help from you. I think they're essentially a boutique. What they do is they just like look at this and negotiate, right? And they take a cut. I would say the cut they take is worth it like many times over.
Interesting.
Because they can negotiate that thing up like 10, 20, 30%. And you will swear the fact that you just paid them $2 million for 4 weeks work or whatever. But the thing is that they were the ones that were able to be that douchebag. And also think about the VC can't be as douchebaggy, because the problem is like they're going to call them in 2 months again and say, hey, we got another company. But the corporate finance firm, they're out the window when this happened. So I think it's like there is a use for these things.
But I'm curious because we've seen it time and time again, and maybe it doesn't happen that much anymore, where a company says no to 30 million, 100 mil, whatever it is, because they're growing. At what point do you kind of, or I always see it as like the hot potato kind of thing. It's like when you're the hot potato, you kind of want to offload before you kind of get taken out by maybe a competitor, or Google launches a product that's in your vertical. Like, how do you manage what you just said between being kind of that hot potato that kind of just loses steam, right? Because you get taken out by a competitor.
My favorite solution to this is, I think that secondaries is my favorite solution, because I think the problem is, like, with any kind of market, toothpaste to kind of self-driving cars or whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, the winner has a crazy premium of a number two. Number two has a crazy premium of number three, and so on and so forth. Like, if you take whatever, Uber, Lyft, what do you want to take? Number one is at least twice as big as number two, and that's at least twice as big as number three, and so forth. And not only are they twice as big, but then when they're higher, they get twice as much attention. When they're like at an event, like they just have a crazy premium being number one. And like number two has a crazy premium number three anyways, but like you really want to be at the top position. Like it's a huge difference. So the thing is, if you're coming in and thinking, like I'll we can sell, like we're top 10, and maybe we should offload the risk now because maybe we're not going to reach number one. Like essentially the second you say that thing, you have lost all your potential ever premium you can have. Like, because now you're clearly not gunning for number one, because gunning for number one is hard. So the way I think, but the problem is, like, if you're a founder and like the problem you have is like you're now running a company worth just make like $100 million, whatever.
Okay.
You own 20% of that company. Like you have $20 million, and you don't have $20 million.
Yeah.
Like you're living in like whatever, a small apartment, and it's fine. Like you have your car, but that's it, right? You might have like student debt, and like that's it. You have a salary, but it's okay. So like for you, if somebody said you want $20 million, you were like, yeah, that would be pretty good actually. And the problem is that is a big risk. But then why would you gun for number one? Because the risk reward for you is really nasty. Like there is a chance that your stock is going to be worth like $500 million. But the problem is like there's also a significant risk that it's worth zero. Because as you said, you're the hot deal and you're not that deal. So my solution is always, we advise our founders, and like I would recommend any founder to say, after the A round, sell 5%, I mean not 5% units, but like 5% of your stock per round.
Oh, interesting.
Essentially, because I think that like if you, and just taking that off the table, and I think that the way to present it as a founder is saying, hey, whatever Sequoia, hey, whatever fund, like, hey, whatever angels, like whoever knows you around, saying, so like I live in a dingy apartment. Like I'm getting married in 2 years or the next year, whatever. And like I lease my car, the company leases my car, and I get a student debt. Like, and like I know on paper I have like $50 million. I have also these four, right?
Right.
Can I get enough cash to remove these headaches from my life? I can then gun for the big one. But for me, gunning for the big one and ending up with these things, and me talking at like a big event in 10 years and being a celebrity, but also not having solved these four things, not gonna happen, right? So like, give me enough in my bank account that I'm going to go for the big one. And like, if you're any VC, you don't want your CEO founder to just have gotten like $50 million, because then they're immediately going to become an angel investor.
Right.
But if they get $1 million, that's fine.
Yeah, it's not enough to retire. It's enough to get rid of the headache. Fascinating, actually. That's actually really good advice.
So we really recommend our founders, like, we really want them to, when they raise good like B rounds and onward, is like offload a bit. Like just don't offload so that, like, if you're offloading in a direction where A, the amount is ridiculous, then this is going to be hard. Or B, when it actually like it's too big part of your shareholding. Like if you say, hey, I would love to kind of sell 50%. This is like, whoa, your incentives are off now. Like you've just sold 50% of the company. You're looking to this big exit. But I think that's why I feel like I would just cut out like a couple of percent per round. Like when you're saying, hey, I own 50%, I would love to sell 2 in this round. And it's like, hey, we're raising whatever 2%, not life changing. But I think that 2%, like it's a down payment for that apartment, it's like whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the thing is also, as the VC, you have a huge alignment. Like you really want the people to feel calm. Like you don't want people to like, I mean, if people can, and it depends on like where in the world, what you believe in, but like, I mean, I find it so crazy when founders are saying, we would love to get a nanny, but they like, we can't get a nanny, blah, 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 and the company won't pay the nanny. I would be like, what the fuck is not the company paying you a nanny?
Interesting.
It is in the company's absolute best interest of paying your nanny. It's also in your company's best interest to make sure that you spend your time with the kids and are like a complete 360-degree good person. But if you feel that a limit for you is that you don't have a nanny, the company should pay your nanny like times 2. It just feels like super stupid optimization. And I think that there's a balance, right? There are these founders who say, I can only fly business class because otherwise I can't sleep on the plane. I'm just like, you're flying Paris to London. This is a 1-hour flight. Like, you're not going to sleep on that plane. You're after the champagne now, my friend. But if you're flying like, San Francisco, Berlin, and you have a big conference you're attending, I would say don't fly coach. Like, I wouldn't say like fly business class, like, and try to sit next to Alicia Keys or whatever, but like you can bump yourself up one step to whatever economy extra without the blink. But there are these founders that they want to be the big shot. They want to spend the money. And then, of course, if you're the same thing about all these things, there's a point when you're overdoing it, but there's also a point when you realize this actually is really smart.
Yeah, it sounds like it's all about kind of optimization, right? And trying to manage your time better. And if you have to spend a little bit of money for that, it makes a ton of sense. And I 100% agree with you. Like, there's certain tools that I pay for monthly that I think a lot of people will be like, why do you pay for that? But I'm like, because it saves me an astronomical amount of time.
Yeah. And also, actually, the thing to think about is like there are things that save you time, right? And those are super easy. You can just like pick up a pen and calculate like what's the cost of my time if you want to. There's another category which is saves you stress.
Yeah, interesting.
Like, you have a thing which is like, yeah, sure, like, I mean, like, does it, like, how much time you spend on it? Not a lot, but it makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this feels like, oh, sure. Like, we had a super stellar engineer in my first company that we paid a crazy bonus because he had a like really nasty student situation, which really complicated for him, and it was a risk that he would lose an apartment. It was some complications, and we just ended up saying, pay a bonus, just get rid of this problem. This is like one of our best and brightest. Like, we just want this person to not be worried about his apartment. It's not like he spends an hour a day on it, but it's there all the time.
Yeah. Interesting. No, I think that's actually really good advice. But I'm curious, is there any other advice that you give to people when they're maybe looking to kind of get sold and maybe they're, or like, do you start actually making and building relationships with potential customers and or your competition, because maybe you'll buy them, they'll buy you?
Mm-hmm.
How early should you start making these relationships?
Yeah, I think that, like, I think at the end of the day, I think that really early, like if you're at whatever seed round or whatever you are, I think that it's a complete waste of your time spending time with potential acquirers. Like, it's just like, it's just completely meaningless. Like, it's completely, and I think as a founder of especially of a company which is a bit hot, you get invited to every single goddamn event and every single thing. You should just say no to 99% of the things people ask you for. And it's like, I'm gonna be in the front of Time Magazine. It's like, fuck Time Magazine. Like, and it's like, you don't have time for that. Like, you should execute the company. And I think that there's just so many things people will throw at you. It's like, oh, we're doing this thing, and gala, do you want to like have a sweater? And just like, no, sorry. Like, I'm going to work with hiring great people, working with the vision, building great products, selling. Like, I don't have time for this, right? And I mean, every single conference we want you to have is a keynote speaker. And I think that sometimes you can just say it would be actually good and it would be fun. That's fine. But most of the times it's just like, it's not going to be useful. And they say, oh, it's in like top of Mount Everest. You're like, yeah, but that's going to take me a whole week to get there. Like, it's just like, no, sorry, I can do it on Zoom if you want to. So I think that's one thing. But I think that then what you do, I would say that there's a stage of a company where, like, if you rate your A, your B, your something, the thing is that the potential acquirers for you are definitely your partners, competition, all of the things. So, and I would say, like, I think people should know their competitors and partners way earlier than they think. So, like, if you realize, like, okay, we're the, this next generation hotel company, better, whatever, and you were like, it's so good, you didn't understand, oh shit, I found out one in Bangalore. I would just ping them saying, hey, I think we're doing the same thing. We're in New York, you're in Bangalore. I think we're like zero competition because like we happen to be in different parts of the world. I would just love to share stuff with you. Like, can we just like, trade secrets? And I think that there it's so easy, right? Because like you have, like, sure, you might be competitors in 10 years or 5 years, whatever, but like in fact, you have different class of fighters. It doesn't really matter. And like, this was a crazy thing happened to me when I scaled my first company. It's like, we were always the company that picked up the phone and called our competitors and saying, I think Samsung is like fucking up both of us, right? I think like we just got an email from them. I'm pretty sure you got the same email. And like, we had competitors who were like, I can't tell you about that, da. But then like during the call, they kind of turn around and it's like, can you share the email? That's like, hey, Frank, I think we both got the email. And they were like, yeah. Okay. They're just trying to play us against each other right now. Okay. And I'd like, of course, I'm not going to share our pricing with you. Like, I'm not going to tell you everything, but let's figure out how we do this in a good way. And I think that I don't know how many founders I tell this thing to, and they just say I would never call them. And I feel like it's just a big difference if your competitor turns into a human. The second you understand that your partner, competitor, whoever it is, becomes a real person, then you, like, so many things change for you. You realize that, hey, I can call them and ask this other question because, like, we have a thing that we could actually collaborate on.
Oh, interesting.
And the time you call them when it was like a bit of tension, then it's like, it's way easier if you call them now when it's not attention, and you're like, yeah, that was good to fix the thing with Samsung. Yeah, good for both of us. Yep, I know. So that's great. So like, I mean, I used to, like, go to dinner and like have conversations, and especially if you go to trade shows. Like, if you go to trade shows, you're all going to be there. Like, I usually just ping my competitors, like, Frank, Alicia, John. I know we look at competitors and we have the same customers. I would love to just do it like a super early, like, whatever drink session before this thing starts. Can we just, that would just be a lot of fun. And like, I know we're going to kid each other on stage, but let's try. I think it's just so great because then you've chatted a bit, and like, it's just like, you're a person. You have each other on WhatsApp. So we say that first. And the same thing happens then when you're bigger, because then when you're bigger, like, if you're the biggest database company in the world and Microsoft could acquire you, Microsoft is also your competitor. Like, if you don't know the person with database Microsoft, you're an idiot. Like, you just like, you're not, like, what usually what I tell people is like, try to separate the company from the person. Just like, do you hate Frank? No. Is your company Frank's your company and Frank's company competitors? Yes. Okay, get back. Do you hate Frank? I don't hate Frank. Okay, good. Party with Frank, for God's sake. Don't party with his company. Party with Frank. He's an awesome person. Like, you're gonna have a ball. Don't tell him your pricing. Don't send him your agreements. But like, party with Frank, for God's sake. And I think like one of those things when you start doing those things and realizing it's like, life becomes so much easier. Like, if you have this tension against Frank, you shouldn't. Not at all. And it's like, I think that's like one thing. And I think then when you get up at like your B round or C round or E or whatever, then like party with like your, the Googles and Microsofts that are kind of your competition, because like they're real people. And I think that is the difference. And I would say like, then I think it's like, if you ask like, when to start these things, I would say that depending on what kind of size you're building, like if you're building a company and like, you're not going to be like the number one, whatever hotel company in the world, but you got like good metrics, this company works. Then I think that then there are amazing sites nowadays, like MicroAcquire. Like MicroAcquire is an amazing site. You just go in, you list your stuff, and you say, hey, we're thinking about like, flipping this thing. People look at your metrics and it's like, whoa, that's an amazing like calendar plugin to sync with CRM systems. I'd love to look at this. I see your sales metrics. Can I acquire you? Like, I know people who literally like they didn't like angel, they got around from AngelList, never talked to VCs. 2 years later, they list on MicroAcquire, they sold the company. They never sat down with a banker in an office. They still live in Denver. They still ski every day. Now they're building their second company. And I think those things, it's so good because I think it allows you to like, sure, you're not going to build Uber. But you're going to build a good thing that you just like, you just got $1 million. Right. It's just like, that's great. So I think there's that. But if you're saying, no, I'm going to build the biggest gas company in the world, then it's very different. Like then you have to gun to be number one. And then when you're at that acquisition stage, the only way to do it essentially is like, you have to be so strategically important that they buy you. You never sell. You can't pick up the phone and saying, hey, we're thinking about offloading this asset to you. They'll be like, why the fuck? Like, what? Is something bad? The only way that happens is they call you and say, hey, I'm thinking about a thing. And you'll be like, I'm listening. And it's like, and remember, you've had drinks with them at the trade show. They know you. Right. Like, hey, I really want to talk about this proposition. We know you're doing an IPO next year. We've seen the paperwork. It looks really awesome. We don't want to pay premium prices for you being public. We'd love to buy it before you go IPO. You'd be like, whoa, that's interesting. Tell me what's going on. Like, they're now buying. You're not selling.
Interesting. No, I think that's actually really good advice. So
I think it's two categories, right? Micro acquisition or like big strategic one. And I think the other one in between is like, you've come to a point, you've got a load of know-how, you got a lot of good stuff, but you realize you can't get the metrics together. Then you're looking to an acquire. And then what you do is essentially like you ping your angels or your VC and say, we're not going to get these through. We're not going to we can do the next round, but it's not going to be a good round. We'd love to do soft landing. If you got a good angel or VC, they know some people who run M&A and corp dev at these big firms. They will call them and say, hey, I got this company, Netherlands based, some of the best effing machine learning people I've ever seen. I don't think they're going to rate the next round really well. They're 8 people, really, really stellar. We'd love to see if you're interested. Like I'm thinking $1 million per ML person. They could relocate, but Amsterdam is a great city. Like, if you're Google, Facebook, Apple, they'll be like, we got a site there. how much did you say? I'm thinking like, I don't know what the acqui-hire prices are nowadays, but
Right.
like I've heard like it's $1 million per head for good ML people. Yeah, it's north of that, but happy to talk to them. They're going to come in, they're going to say, they're going to hire the 8 people. So
Right.
now it's a job interview situation. They just want to figure out if they want to hire you, and they're going to go through your tests and everything that they do. And then they say, yeah, we offer 6 jobs. We'll pay $1.5 million per head of these people. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. But that's like the mid case when like you won't get it to work, but you want to do like, and you don't have the metrics. You can't like list yourself a microacquire.